Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, a viewer-supported feature where we answer your questions on history, on political philosophy, economics, current events, culture, all those things that matter to us in our attempt to build a good society together.
All right, here's a good question from Alistair. He says, there's been some talk about the U.S. imposing a 20% or whatever the percentage import duty on Mexican goods to pay for that famous wall that Donald Trump has been promising. He says, but surely this means that it would be Americans paying for that, since they're the customers who would buy those important goods from Mexico. What's up with that?
That is a very good point, and I'm convinced that if we continue to make it patiently and persistently for another 250 years, it may sink in. Because as long ago as Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations in 1776, it has been understood by people who understand it that the purpose of trade is not to get foreign currency or precious metals in return for valuable goods and services. It is to exchange our goods and services for other goods and services that we would rather have, in return for the foreigners getting things from us that they would rather have than what they've got. I mean, take a very simple-minded example. If we're really good at making shoes and some other country's really good at making shirts, then we have more shoes than we really need. They have more shirts. We trade our shoes for their shirts, and we're both better off. But to us, the critical thing here is getting those shirts for our consumers. And as clear as this point is, it has been misunderstood right down to the present day. In fact, Andrew Coyne recently wrote with irritation, because Andrew certainly understands this, that all trade negotiations are essentially mercantilist. That is the older theory of trade, which is that our exports are good and our imports are bad, and when our stuff beats their stuff, we're winning, yay, boo, kick sand in their faces. Because when we're dealing with a situation where some other country has trade restrictions on our exports and we have trade restrictions on imports from them, our politicians go about as though it would be a good thing if we could send them more stuff, but a bad thing if we got more stuff from them. And so we say, well, we will only get rid of our protectionist barriers if you get rid of your protectionist barriers. But what their protectionist barriers do is raise the cost of things that their people would like to buy from abroad and make them poorer. And what our protectionist barriers do is raise the cost of things that Canadians would like to buy and make us poorer. So we're essentially saying we will only stop hitting ourselves in the head if you stop hitting yourselves in the head. And what we really ought to do is just stop hitting ourselves in the head. If Donald Trump imposes this 20% tariff, if Congress does, what's going to happen? Imports will become 20% more expensive from Mexico to the United States. And American consumers who buy things from Mexico will pay 20% more for everything they buy. They will have to give Mexicans 1/5 again as much of whatever they're giving Mexicans in order to get whatever they're getting from Mexicans. Now, all kinds of other things will happen. People will buy from other countries. Trade is extremely mobile in the modern world. What's more, Donald Trump and some of his economic skinhead supporters will learn that even the American and Mexican economies are quite tightly integrated, that things go back and forth across the border, and that this is a foolish idea. And I say that as somebody who actually agrees with enforcing American immigration law. It's ridiculous to say Americans can't build a wall. They've already got a wall on about 1,000 kilometers of the border, and great nations control their frontiers and they control who comes in and goes out. But you don't do it this way. By the same token, though, Canada has all kinds of policies, especially agricultural supply management, whose deliberate intent is to raise the price of food for Canadians, which hits the poor particularly hard, in order to favor a small group of Canadian producers, which it doesn't even do. Because if we had freer trade and people were selling us more cheese and milk and so on, they would be getting Canadian dollars. The only thing that they could do with those Canadian dollars is spend them in Canada. So we would be exporting more as well. It's a necessary consequence of importing more. The industry would be more competitive. New Zealand actually dismantled protection for its agriculture a quarter of a century ago, and by golly, after a period of transition, their agricultural sector flourished. So yes, it would be Americans who'd pay more. And this isn't just an argument against that way of financing border control. This is an argument against all protectionism. And it is an argument against these elaborate trade negotiations that go nowhere, where we're trading concessions that aren't even concessions. All we need to do in this country is get rid of our barriers to trade. We will get more things more cheaply from foreigners, who in turn will have no option but to buy from us. And if their governments make Canadian goods expensive, you know what happens? We send less stuff to foreigners and get more stuff from them. So we end up with more of their stuff and more of our stuff, and we're all better off. The purpose of economics is to have things, not to toil. Slavery is where you work and don't get stuff. And the purpose of trade is to export as little as possible and get as much as possible back. So yes, you are right, and your question is a very profound one, the answer to which has been clear to some of us for 250 years, and yet continues to baffle politicians and a surprising number of commentators. The point of trade is to get imports, and if we bear that in mind, that it's for Canadians to get quality products at good prices, then we'll have a different trade policy than we do, and a much better one.
All right, then. Thanks for that, folks. If you would like to play along and ask your question of the professor, the URL on your screen will take you to a page where everything is explained. Thanks, and see you next time.